Hello, my name is Earl Beede. I'm a senior fellow here at Construx, and I suggest to you that we rethink the word requirement. Because what do we mean when, in the software world in particular, when we say the word requirement? What I think we mean is that somebody out there is saying that they want something. They have a need or a want, and that they desire somebody to act on it. As they speak, the requirement worker tries to capture those utterances the best they can. It can be in stories, or documents, or pictures, or something. Whatever the format, the requirement worker will do their best to stay true to the intent. If the person who is making the statement is outside of the development team, that is, if they're not a developer, they're not a techie person, particularly if they're someone like a business person, a client, a user, or some other stakeholder, we then label that utterance as a requirement. We say, yep, that's a requirement. Because someone outside the team has said that they want something or they need something. I think labeling every request of someone outside of the team as a requirement often gets us in a lot of trouble. Because what comes out of their mouth that they say are requirements aren't really required as much as they are just a potential solution to a problem they might have. Even more scary is that the true underlying problem, their critical need that they thought they have a solution for, hasn't even been fully stated. Often, it's not even been thought through. They haven't understood the problem. They have this really cool idea for solving some problem that they've never fully articulated. And, surprisingly enough, the people having the problem are not usually the expert designers who solve problems, so the solution they have in mind to the poorly defined problem often doesn't work as desired. But we have this stack of statements that we've labeled requirements. Surely there must be some actual needs, some problem statements in the stack. Let's draw a box. On the side, I will label it high to low, as I hear people talk about high-level and low-level requirements. On the top of the box, we will separate out the problems and the solutions to those problems. I'll just draw a line to separate the problems from the solutions. If you look what's captured in the stack of things that we call requirements, where do they land in our box? After 30 plus years of looking at requirements from companies all over the world, almost all of them land in this lower part of the solution column. Relatively detailed solutions that our requesters think will solve some unexamined problem they believe they have. They say, this is what I want. This is what I need. Perhaps what we need to do here instead is to say, instead of thinking about these requirements just because they came from somebody or something outside of the development team, it may be better not to use that term just yet, that term requirement. Perhaps initially, it may be better to think of these things in the stack as simply as decisions. Someone has decided they want something. Someone has decided they need something. It's just a decision. It's not a requirement yet per se, but it's a decision. We can then examine the decision content and see if the requester, in all likelihood, has made a decision about the solution. As we analyze this decision, we could do something interesting in that we could talk about the scope of the decision. If this is the scope of the decision wide, or is the scope of the decision narrow? Because if it's a wide decision scope, then we start saying that decision impacts everything about the problem or impacts everything about the solution. A narrow decision scope only impacts a little bit of the problem or impacts a little bit of the solution. And what we would love to have requirements worker do is say, okay, stakeholder, you've made a decision about the solution. Let's now go talk about what problems you're trying to solve with this. This is really what the product owners, business analysts, and other requirements workers should be doing. Requirements workers will say, you came up with a decision about the solution. Great. Got them. Wrote them down. We have recorded them. But let's now talk about the problems you think you're solving when you're building that solution. The requirement worker must seek real problems or true needs that are out there and have the requester make decisions about that. Because it's much better that the people who have the real problem, the real need, who are most likely outside of the development team, decide what problems they need to solve and are willing to pay to solve. Too often today, it's the developer guessing at the requester's problem, based upon the developer's experience. Now, can the requester still make decisions about solutions? Can people outside the team make a decision about how they want the problem solved? I think they certainly can. Anyone can make any decision. The question is, who has the best skills and knowledge to make the decision? If you have a qualified decider, that's great. We also want to make sure that the decision is in line with all the other decisions. Our desire is to have all the decisions work together. Generally, we want to drive decisions from the top to the bottom. Wide impact problems should constrain and inform narrow decision problems. Wide scope solution decisions should inform and constrain lower level solutions. We don't want to guess at the wider scope decisions or try to retrofit after making a lot of independent narrow scope decisions. We also generally want problems to drive solutions. A solution is there because of a problem, not because we have a solution for solution's sake. We always want the development to be solving problems. Now, sometimes solutions cause new problems, that's understandable, but generally, problems drive solutions. If you examine the want or need decision and discover that is a fairly narrow solution, say, where the red star is, we need to ask questions in two directions. An obvious first direction is, does it live within the constraints of the solutions we're already looking at? Does it fit in our architecture and design patterns? Does that particular solution make sense? And then we want to switch direction and ask, is that solution solving some real problem? What is the problem? Is the problem within the scope of the problems we're being asked to solve? We need to look both directions. This is the job of a good requirements worker. The bottom line here is, if we rethink requirements as decisions, if we think of them as decisions that someone wants to impose on the implementation, we can look at the decision and say, okay, what are you actually deciding about? And do I understand all the things around? Like, is it fitting within my solution space? And is it truly a problem that we need to solve? I think if we rethink requirements as decisions, we can have a much better requirements process.